Envision a sun-baked expanse at the core of a bygone empire, a realm where the very essence of history seems poised to pause. On one side stands a youthful monarch who truly believes that divine lineage courses through his veins, leading a formidable force of seasoned fighters who have triumphed over every challenge that has stood in their way before him. The sovereign of the grandest empire in history has gathered a legion so vast it surpasses all comprehension. Resolved to vanquish this emerging foe once and for all, this is not merely another age-old conflict. This is the epic clash of two monumental forces from history, where empires can ascend or crumble within the span of a single day. Welcome to Gaugamela, the stage where Alexander the Great and Darius III would craft the most dramatic tale.
And bring an end to the war.
An era marked by valor and resilience as we prepare to explore this monumental confrontation that reshaped the course of events. Don't forget to tap that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. You definitely won't want to overlook the amazing tales we have in store for you. Now let us observe how a single brilliant tactical decision would transform the ancient world for all time. A tale of fascination. In the year 331 BCE, an electric tension surged through the ancient world, reminiscent of the charged atmosphere just before a tempest. 2 arduous years had elapsed since the harrowing clash at Issus, upon a slender coastal plain that had rendered his vast numbers insignificant. A modest Macedonian contingent had decisively defeated a formidable Persian army.
We must strike tonight.
The defeat was so complete
unsuspecting
that the formidable Darius III, the King of Kings, faced utter humiliation.
I will not steal my victory.
The sovereign of a vast empire, extending from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, found himself compelled to forsake his mother.
As a mere ruse,
his wife and children were on the battlefield, fleeing for their lives in complete disgrace.
Eat, rest, and prepare yourselves.
Alexander was not satisfied with a single triumph. He recognized that an empire cannot be vanquished until its heart ceases to beat, as Darius tends to his wounds in the magnificent palaces of Babylon, summoned the complete and fearsome power of his dwindling realm. The Macedonian king had been engaged in a methodical and ruthless manner, methodically breaking down the Persian Empire, one territory at a time, through Alexander's military campaigns. In those 2 years, the experience unfolded like a fantastical tale, a testament to a will that approached the divine. His campaign achieved legendary status at the island fortress of Tyre, captivating the Tyrians. As proud heirs of the Phoenicians and skilled navigators of the ocean, they felt a sense of security on their island, just half a mile from the shore. They scoffed at his call for surrender. Never had anyone managed to conquer their city from the sea. Thus, Alexander, driven by a fervent and almost frenzied resolved to master the ocean over the course of 7 arduous months. His soldiers, hailing from the rugged heights of Macedon, struggled to construct an enormous stone causeway, a land bridge across the ocean, all while facing relentless assault from the Tyrian navy's fireships and archers as the mole was at last finished. Alongside his newly constructed siege towers, some of the tallest ever witnessed in the ancient world, surged toward the city walls. The savage onslaught that ensued, resulting in the massacre of thousands and the enslavement of tens of thousands, delivered a haunting proclamation to the globe. No barrier is too tall, no ocean too vast to hinder Alexander. He surged across the Mediterranean coast with an unyielding force. He freed Syria and Phoenicia from Persian dominance, and then entered Egypt in a grand display of victory. The Egyptians, who had endured the weight of Persian rule for far too long, perceived it as both oppressive and sacrilegious. They did not perceive a conqueror. Instead, they recognized a liberator in the ancient capital of Memphis, the Egyptian priesthood. With centuries of tradition behind them, welcomed him with open arms, they anointed him as their new pharaoh, a rightful heir to the ancient dynasties, a deity among mortals. In Egypt, Alexander undertook one of his most enduring endeavors, the establishment of a new city at the mouth of the Nile. A city he called Alexandria, it was a brilliant move of strategic and cultural insight, destined to emerge as the intellectual and commercial hub of the Mediterranean realm for a millennium. Yet for Alexander, mere earthly accomplishments fell short. He set forth on a treacherous quest, venturing into the harsh expanse of the Libyan desert, towards the secluded oasis of Siwa, to seek the wisdom of the renowned oracle of the god Amun, whom the Greeks identified with Zeus. The chief priest, it is said, welcomed him not merely as a man, but as the son of Ammon, affirming what Alexander had always felt deep within, that he was of celestial lineage destined to fulfill a sacred purpose. He transcended his role as the king of Macedon. He became a pharaoh, a deity walking among mortals. Amidst the unyielding campaign, Darius endeavored to employ diplomacy from his newly established capital in Babylon. He observed Alexander's relentless march with increasing dread. The peace proposals from the Persian king were remarkably generous, extending to Alexander everything west of the Euphrates River. Essentially half of his empire, encompassing all of Asia Minor, Syria, and Egypt, he proposed an immense ransom for his seized family, a wealth of gold and silver that could have crowned Alexander as the wealthiest man on earth. And he proposed his own daughter's hand in marriage, a political alliance capable of ensuring enduring peace when Alexander's most trusted and seasoned general. On hearing these terms, the seasoned veteran Parmenion was left in a state of shock. Parmenion embodied pragmatism, a figure of Philip's era who viewed warfare through the lens of attainable objectives. He perceived the offer as the pinnacle of triumph, a reward that surpassed the wildest imaginations of those who had first ventured into Asia. He reportedly expressed with true astonishment, "If I were Alexander, I would gladly accept these offers right away and bring an end to Alexander's war." The response has resonated throughout history for more than 2,000 years, embodying his boundless ambition perfectly. "So would I," he replied. "If I were Parmenion." This wasn't mere arrogance. In his words, one could sense the perspective of a man who perceived the world through a unique lens. For Alexander, this campaign had evolved beyond simple territorial gains. He was not a monarch negotiating for territories. He was a demigod asserting his rightful heritage. He was convinced that he was destined by a higher power to bring the entire world together under his leadership. Half measures were foreign to him. A shared world was not an option. There would be only one king. The reaction from Persia. Upon hearing of Alexander's scornful dismissal of his peace proposals, the city of Babylon was abuzz with intrigue. Any hope Darius had for a diplomatic solution vanished, overshadowed by the shame of Isis and the capture of his family. And now this ultimate display of arrogance cemented his determination. He finally and truly grasped that negotiation was futile. This was not a battle for land, but a struggle for existence. This ambitious young Macedonian was relentless in his pursuit, determined to seize the entire Persian throne room for himself, until the Achaemenid dynasty, which had reigned for more than 2 centuries, was extinguished for all time. The mighty king now battles not merely for his empire, but for his very existence and his honor. His legacy dedicated the following 2 years to orchestrating the most massive throughout human history. Military mobilization has often been marked by a summons that reached even the most distant provinces of a ruler's realm. Spanning the shores of the Caspian Sea, the towering mountains of contemporary Afghanistan, and the vast plains of India. This will not be merely another border skirmish resolved by local governors. It shall be a holy war, led by the King of Kings himself. To obliterate the Western invader, Darius meticulously selected his battlefield with precision, the accuracy of a seasoned chess player who had absorbed the harshest of truths. He faced humiliation at Issus, where the constricted coastal landscape had confined his vast army, nullified the benefit of his superior forces, and hindered his formidable cavalry from operating efficiently. He had been outmaneuvered by the very terrain around him. He vowed never to let that happen again. This time he would engage on terrain of his own selection. Having conferred with his senior commanders, he made his choice a sprawling, utterly level expanse adjacent to the quaint village of Gaugamela, strategically positioned near his primary supply hub at Arbela in present-day Iraq. The terrain stretched out expansively, perfectly suited for a formidable army, where sheer numbers and cavalry could dominate. Superiority would serve as the crucial elements, yet Darius did not merely select the battlefield, he meticulously crafted it. Persian engineers, alongside thousands of laborers, dedicated months to the careful leveling of every bump. Removing every shrub and eliminating every stone or obstacle that could hinder his most formidable weapons, they were constructing an enormous billiard table for battle, a flawlessly level arena for the impending carnage. The vast expanse extended infinitely in all directions, offering boundless possibilities. An expanse for his staggering forces to advance in a continuous, unyielding formation, stretching for miles, and for his cavalry, the pride of his army, to function without limitation. He was not merely getting ready for a confrontation. He was crafting a lethal arena, customized flawlessly to leverage the strengths of his forces while exploiting the perceived vulnerabilities of his adversary. The army that gathered at Gaugamela was a stunning manifestation of imperial strength that reached across continents. Ancient historians, while occasionally given to embellishment, depict a formidable force. That could have included around 250,000 fighters gathered from numerous nations throughout the known world. At its heart lay the legendary 10,000 immortals, the Persian Empire's most distinguished heavy infantry. The armor gleaming with gold, creating the king's elite guard, they were surrounded by a multitude of Greek mercenary hoplites, skilled warriors from Sparta, Athens, and Thebes, who engaged in battle for Persian gold, and were regarded as the sole infantry globally able to confront the Macedonian. The phalanx stood firm in a direct shield-to-shield confrontation, yet the true spectacle resided in the remarkable diversity of the army. This was not a national army. It was an imperial host, a vibrant tableau of warfare. Bactrian horsemen from the steppes of Central Asia, heavily armed lancers, constituted the elite of his eastern cavalry. Guided by the duplicitous satrap Basis, a figure whose ambition rivaled the frailty of his loyalty. Scythian archers were nomadic warriors celebrated for their lethal precision while mounted, able to shoot with remarkable skill in any direction. Guidance amidst a swift charge from a relentless force unlike anything the Macedonians had encountered before Indian warriors from the far-off Indus Valley arrived, carrying with them weapons and tactics that were entirely unfamiliar to the Greeks. Alongside something even more fearsome, there were Babylonians, Armenians, Medes, and Cappadocians, each possessing distinct fighting styles, weaponry, and battle cries. This was not just an army. It represented the unified military strength of a whole continent. A diverse and multilingual assembly united for a singular mission: to protect their sovereign, their realm, and their traditions from the encroaching Western foe. This was the authentic Grand Army of the Persian Empire, poised to obliterate Alexander from the annals of history. The instruments of fear. Amidst this immense assembly, Darius had assembled elite units, fearsome legions sourced from the most distant reaches of his empire, crafted not merely to combat the Macedonians, but to deeply unsettle them. Two of these units, in particular, instilled a deep sense of dread in the hearts of even the most seasoned warriors. Initially, there were the 200 scythed chariots, arguably the most fearsome shock weapon in the annals of ancient warfare. These were not the agile, swift chariots of the pharaohs or the legendary warriors of Troy. Instead, each one was a formidable four-horse death machine. An embodiment of sheer dread, they were meticulously re-engineered by Darius for this confrontation. Crafted with a singular intent: the total destruction of heavily armored infantry units similar to the Macedonian phalanx. Long, razor-sharp blades resembled giant scythes stretched out horizontally from the wheels, crafted to rotate at the speed of a chariot. Positioned at shin height, slashing a crimson path through the forefront of an infantry formation. More spear points jutted out, propelling from the axles, and the chariot's yoke designed to pierce anyone who endured the first collision. They were crafted to embody a psychological torment, a mechanical reaper of demise that would not merely shatter a formation, yet would transform well-ordered, disciplined troops into a chaotic, shrieking throng of disarrayed bodies and severed limbs. In mere moments, their aim was to orchestrate a display of such gruesome brutality that the spirit of the entire opposing force would shatter in an instant. The terrifying charge became even more daunting, as they were real, living, breathing monsters. There were the 15 Indian war elephants that Darius had transported from the distant eastern expanses of his empire. These colossal creatures, towering over 10 feet and weighing several tons, were akin to living siege engines. Conditioned from the very beginning to crush foes and instill fear within opposing ranks, every elephant bore a small wooden tower, a howdah upon its back. Manned by javelin throwers capable of unleashing devastation from a mobile elevated firing platform. For the majority of Alexander's soldiers, hailing from the rugged mountains and vast plains of Greece, the sight of an animal larger than a horse was a novel experience. These beings were the embodiment of nightmares brought to life. They are creatures of such immense size, strikingly otherworldly in their looks, and hauntingly loud in their resonant calls. Their mere existence on the battlefield felt otherworldly. They embodied a primal force that defied all logic and reason. A relentless wave of muscle and rage capable of obliterating a man beneath its weight. Unbeknownst to anyone, Darius had devised a scheme to unleash them upon the Macedonian phalanx. Convinced that not even the most valiant warriors of Alexander could withstand the onslaught of a furious mass of sinew and bone, Alexander's reply, confronting this continental army with its seemingly boundless ranks and its daunting array of specialized weaponry, composed of merely 40,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry. The disparity in numbers was so extreme, at least 5 to 1, that any sensible commander would have deemed the situation desperate and sought terms without delay. Yet these were no ordinary soldiers. Alexander, far from being a rational commander, viewed the vast Persian host not as an insurmountable barrier, yet as the crowning achievement, a magnificent final trial for the war machine his father had conceived, and he had refined. His army was composed of the most skilled, seasoned, and deadly warriors of the ancient era. The core was established by the Macedonian phalanx, an unyielding and relentless barrier of 18-foot pikes, known as sarissas. As the phalanx interlocked its shields, it formed an unassailable barrier of steel points, a formidable wall that seemed to rise like an impenetrable forest. With the foremost 5 ranks of soldiers poised to thrust their pikes forward in unison, it was a colossal, methodical hedgehog of doom, capable of impaling foes from a distance, long before they could approach, adequate to wield their own shorter spears or swords. Bolstering the phalanx were the hypaspists or shield-bearers, a distinguished and adaptable group of foot soldiers capable of protecting the exposed sides of the phalanx function as a swift response unit or connect the infantry with the cavalry. And then came the devastating strike of his forces, the most elite heavy cavalry known to man, the companion cavalry. These individuals were the offspring of the Macedonian elite, having honed their skills in horsemanship from a young age. They were personally led by Alexander himself, wielding the formidable 12-foot Ziston lance as they engaged in battle. In a groundbreaking wedge formation capable of breaching even the most steadfast enemy lines with overwhelming power together. These units created an impeccably harmonious weapon of conflict, a harmonious system of anvil, the phalanx, and hammer, the cavalry, that had demonstrated its invincibility. Yet, the real power of this army lay not in its armaments, but in its spirit. These warriors were not mere mercenaries driven by the lure of riches, nor were they conscripts driven by fear. They were a brotherhood, forged in the crucible of 100 battles. They had journeyed alongside their king, across the vast expanse of the known world, traversing the blistering deserts of Syria, through the freezing snows of the Anatolian highlands. They traversed mighty rivers and laid siege to impossible fortresses, and battled in territories untouched by Greek presence. They were united through years of collective struggle, perpetual peril, and an unyielding sequence of triumph. Their struggle transcended mere conquest or the pursuit of glory. They battled fiercely for the leader who guided them from the forefront. Their loyalty was to the king. Those who were aware of their identities and the identities of their fathers, who came to see them in the medical tents and shared their provisions, and who bled alongside them at the forefront of every charge in their eyes. Alexander transcended the role of mere king. He stood as their brother in arms, a leader favored by the divine, a demigod untouched by the sting of defeat, and who they thought was utterly incapable of it. This unwavering and intense devotion to their leader was a force more formidable than any scythe, chariot, or war elephant. As the sun bled out across the horizon, it cast long, menacing shadows over the vast plain. The eve of fate. As the two armies readied themselves for the impending clash, it was in these hushed, vigilant moments of the night that the weight of their resolve hung heavy in the air. The psychological distinctions between the two forces and their respective kings became vividly clear. The outcome of the battle would hinge not solely on the sword, but also on the strength of the mind. The Persian camp unfolded like a sprawling, anxious city, stretching for miles across the plain, ablaze with energy. Illuminated by the glow of countless torches and campfires, a vast expanse of shimmering light dances beneath the uncaring stars. The atmosphere buzzed with a low, anxious hum, the restless murmurs of men hailing from 100 different lands. The loud calls of pack animals and the rhythmic clanking of armor being meticulously inspected, and the far-off, disquieting trumpeting of the Indian elephants. This was not the assured roar of an army on the brink of triumph. It was the tense whisper of warriors readying themselves for what many feared would be their last stand. The chilling reflections on the fearsome, unblemished legacy of the man they would confront at dawn. Darius remained tormented by the stark and humiliating memories of Alexander. Surprise tactics at Issus left him paralyzed by fear, utterly terrified of the Macedonian king's formidable reputation. For swift maneuvers and bold, unexpected attacks, he found it unbearable to imagine his grand, meticulously organized army descending into chaos due to a sudden night assault led the King of Kings to make a fateful and disastrous choice. In a state of unease over a potential assault that Alexander had no plans to execute, he commanded his vast army to stay vigilant and alert throughout the night. Clad in complete armor and arranged in battle formation all through the night. Envision 250,000 men, poised in their formations against the chill of the desert air. With weapons gripped tightly, their eyes searched the darkness, flinching at every flicker of shadow. Endless hours stretched on, each one more torturous than the last, as the anticipated attack remained elusive as the night progressed. Their preparedness shifted into unease, and that unease transformed into fatigue. As dawn broke, the mightiest army on earth found itself already on the brink of defeat. Their physical vitality sapped and their mental acuity utterly blunted. The Macedonian camp unfolded a starkly contrasting tableau, a compact bastion of order and tranquility amidst the expansive, shadowy plain. Alexander's seasoned generals, guided by the prudent and knowledgeable Parmenian glimpsing the fiery glow of the Persian encampment, it became clear what Darius was orchestrating. They recognized a monumental opportunity and approached Alexander's tent, pleading for his authorization. An unexpected nocturnal onslaught, a tumultuous strike shrouded in shadows they debated, could plunge a vast, multilingual Persian force into a whirlwind of panic and confusion from which they might never recover. Alexander heeded their advice. With a confidence that both inspired and terrified his men, he resolutely refused. He proclaimed, "I will not steal my victory," a declaration destined to echo through the ages. He articulated that a triumph achieved amidst the chaos of obscurity would be perceived as a mere ruse, a stroke of fortune, and would enable Darius to assert that his defeat was due to circumstance rather than superior skill. He would conquer this formidable army in its entirety. The bright light of day illuminating a fierce confrontation, allowing the world to observe the dominance of his troops and his strategic prowess. He offered no excuses. Instead, he commanded his men to partake in a hearty meal, to find solace and enjoy a restful night's slumber. As the Persian king maintained a tense watch over his weary and apprehensive soldiers, Alexander the Great, upon finalizing his plans, he retreated to his tent, leaving the historians to ponder, reveal that on the eve of the most crucial battle of his existence, he holds the fate of the world in his grasp. He slumbered with such profound tranquility that his generals were compelled to rouse him come morning. This was not just bravado, it was a meticulously planned maneuver of unparalleled psychological warfare. The news of his composed refusal to entertain the idea of a night attack swept through his entire army with the speed of wildfire. It instilled in his men an unwavering, almost otherworldly conviction. If their king could rest so serenely in the face of such insurmountable odds. If the odds are in our favor, it seems the battle has already been secured. We are merely approaching the remarkable strategic brilliance. Alexander was on the verge of unleashing his might. But first, if you're appreciating this in-depth exploration of one of history's most pivotal battles, spread the love by tapping that like button. It truly aids us in delivering more incredible historical content like this. Alexander's grand strategy. As dawn illuminated the vast plains of Gaugamela, a revitalized and sharp-minded Alexander emerged. Assembled his commanders for what would turn into one of the most analyzed military briefings in history. Standing before them, he unveiled a strategy of remarkable intricacy and inventive tactics. It must have appeared as sheer madness, a chaotic symphony woven from threads of deception and violence, a brilliant creation crafted to neutralize each of Darius's formidable strengths by transforming the magnitude of the Persian army into a tool of self-destruction. Initially, Alexander recognized that a straightforward frontal attack would lead to certain doom. His small army would be engulfed by the vast Persian forces, like a wave futilely crashing against an unyielding cliff. He opted to decline a traditional confrontation. Instead, he crafted what military historians refer to as an oblique advance. He would not advance directly. Instead, he would take the lead of his distinguished right wing, the companion cavalry. The elite hypaspists and their finest light infantry advanced at a sharp diagonal angle, advancing not towards the heart of the Persian forces, but instead towards the distant right flank of the battlefield. This peculiar lateral motion was a purposeful and strategic provocation, seemingly serving a dual purpose. It would give the impression of desperation, nearly desperate effort to circumvent the expansive Persian left flank. This would compel the Persian cavalry on that flank, led by the satrap Bessus, to they would need to relocate to confront him and stop him from circumventing their line. This, Alexander reasoned, would extend the Persian battle line, thereby undermining its unity. More importantly, he anticipated that it would draw the cavalry away from its own infantry center, thereby creating the momentary gap he sought. An isolated vulnerability within the immense Persian structure. He strategically deployed his most prized soldiers as bait, enticing the enemy to commit a grave error. However, this bold lateral movement posed a significant threat. As his right wing advanced, it exposed the remainder of his forces, especially the vulnerable left flank under the command of the seasoned veteran. Parmenion found himself perilously vulnerable, at risk of being entirely encircled by the formidable Persian forces. To address this significant threat, Alexander devised an innovative defense strategy, meticulously organizing. His forces were arranged in what could be described as a vast, open-ended rectangle, with his main phalanx constituting a formidable front face. Yet, behind them, he arranged a second line of infantry at an angle reminiscent of the slanted walls of a fortress, prepared to shift and confront any surprise maneuver from the Persian right. This reserve line served as Alexander's safety net, just as he anticipated. The cavalry of the Persian right wing, commanded by Macedonian, sought to encircle his lesser force. This second line could deny the flank, swinging back to establish a new battle line and safeguard the army's rear. This groundbreaking advancement has the potential to reshape his army from a linear formation into a fortified square, a versatile stronghold, adept at engaging on various fronts simultaneously. It was a profoundly intricate operation that demanded unwavering trust between the commander and the troops, because it involved splitting his already outnumbered forces even more, thereby compromising his main line to safeguard his rear. At last, Alexander had crafted a particular and psychologically an ingenious counter-strategy against Darius's fearsome scythed chariots. He grasped that these weapons were crafted to instill fear and disrupt formations. Resisting them was tantamount to certain doom, so he commanded his frontline infantry to perform the singular act that contradicted every soldier's instinct, not to hold back, but to embrace openness. He had meticulously trained his men to create openings in their formation at the very last moment. Establishing pathways for the chariots to traverse safely, he instructed them to raise their voices in a loud call. They struck their spears against their shields, crafting a fearsome din intended to unsettle the horses and drive them into these cunning traps. Men stationed behind these openings, forming the second rank of the phalanx alongside light infantry, were commanded to launch javelins at the horses and drivers as they moved, effectively neutralizing the threat from within the formation itself. This plan was an audacious risk that hinged on the remarkable discipline and bravery of each individual involved.